The dish soap bubbles clung to my weathered hands as I scrubbed Leonard's favorite coffee mug for the third time this week. Same routine every evening. Washed the single plate, single fork, single cup that marked another solitary dinner. The kitchen felt cavernous without his humming while he cooked, without his gentle teasing about leaving recipe books scattered across the table. I dried the mug carefully and placed it in the dish rack where it always sat, like a shrine to better times. The refrigerator hummed its lonely tune, decorated with faded photos held by mismatched magnets. My eyes found the picture of Rachel at her high school graduation, 17 years old, grinning in her cap and gown, Leonard's arm wrapped around her shoulders. Before the arguments, before the money, before the silence. The phone's shrill ring cut through my reverie like a knife. My wet hands fumbled for the dish towel as the phone continued its insistent demand. The wall-mounted receiver felt cold against my palm as I lifted it, squinting at the caller ID through my reading glasses. The number made my breath catch. Rachel. For a moment, I couldn't move. A year of silence stretched between us like an ocean. The last time we'd spoken, she'd stormed out after I'd refused to loan her money for her investment opportunity. Leonard would have handled it better. He always knew the right words. Hello. My voice came out rougher than intended. Mom. Rachel's voice carried that same uncertain tone from her childhood when she'd broken something valuable and wasn't sure how much trouble she was in. It's me. I gripped the phone tighter, my heart hammering against my ribs. Rachel, I wasn't expecting. I know it's been. She paused and I could hear her breathing. Too long. Way too long. I moved slowly to my armchair, the one Leonard had insisted we buy because it supported my back properly. The leather was worn smooth from years of evening news and Sunday crosswords. How are you, sweetheart? I'm good. Really good. Marcus and we've been talking and we realized how much we miss having you around. How much we miss family. The word hung in the air between us. Family. Something we'd been once before pride and money and stubborn silence built walls between us. I miss it too, I admitted, surprised by the honesty in my own voice. Mom, would you consider coming for dinner tonight? Marcus is making that pot roast you always loved and we could talk. Really talk like we used to. I stared at the family photo on my side table. Rachel, Marcus, Leonard, and me at their wedding 5 years ago. Before everything went wrong. Leonard always said, families find their way back to each other given time. Tonight. My voice betrayed my surprise. I know it's short notice, but Marcus is already cooking, and we don't want to wait anymore. We've wasted enough time. Something in her voice tugged at my heart. A vulnerability I remembered from when she was small and afraid of thunderstorms. Maybe Leonard had been right. Maybe families really could heal. What time? 7:30. I'll text you the address. We moved to Oak Park last year. Oak Park, expensive territory, but then Rachel had always been ambitious. I'll be there. Mom. Her voice softened. Thank you for giving us another chance. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk, holding the family photo in my trembling hands. Leonard smiled up at me from the frame, and I could almost hear him whisper, "It's time, Dorothy. It's time to come home." The silence that followed the dial tone felt different somehow, charged with possibility instead of emptiness. I set the family photo carefully back on the side table and rose from my chair with a purpose I hadn't felt in months. Tonight would be different. Tonight, I'd have my daughter back. Upstairs, my bedroom felt like a museum of memories. Leonard's cologne bottles still lined his dresser, dust motes dancing in the late afternoon light streaming through lace curtains. I opened my closet and pushed past everyday blouses and worn cardigans until my fingers found the navy dress hanging in protective plastic. The fabric felt substantial between my fingers, a wool blend that Leonard had insisted on when he'd surprised me with it for Rachel's graduation. You need something nice for important occasions, he'd said, smoothing the fabric with his careful hands. And our daughter graduating is definitely important. I carried the dress to the bed and unwrapped it slowly, remembering how proud I'd felt walking into that auditorium, Leonard on my arm, watching Rachel cross the stage. The same dress had seen me through business meetings, anniversaries, and Leonard's funeral. Tonight, it would witness another milestone. The shower's hot water loosened muscles I didn't realize I'd been tensing. As I applied my makeup, I caught my reflection studying me with hopeful eyes. When had I gotten so old? The lines around my eyes had deepened, and silver now dominated my temples. Would Rachel notice? Would Marcus see how lonely I'd become? Leonard's aftershave sat on the bathroom counter where I'd left it after his passing. Old Spice, his Christmas gift to himself every year. I touched the bottle briefly, then reached for my own perfume. Some memories were too precious to borrow from. Dressed and ready, I surveyed my reflection one final time. The dress still fit well, though perhaps a bit looser than before. I selected a bottle of aged whiskey from the cabinet, a peace offering, something to bridge the gap between past hurts and future hopes. My phone buzzed with Rachel's text. 482, Lakeside Avenue, Oak Park. Can't wait to see you, Mom. I called for an Uber, my fingers hesitating over the keyboard as I typed the address. Oak Park was 40 minutes away, another world from my modest Chicago neighborhood. The app showed a wait time of 8 minutes. Standing by my front window, I watched familiar brownstones blur into evening shadows. Mrs. Patterson from next door waved from her stoop, and I waved back, feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe tonight would change everything. Maybe family really could find its way home. The Uber arrived precisely on time, a clean sedan with a friendly driver who commented on the nice weather. As we pulled away from the curb, as Chicago gave way to highways, and highways gave way to manicured suburbs, I watched the world transform outside my window. Houses grew larger, lawns more pristine, driveways wider. By the time we crossed into Oak Park, I was staring at mansions that could have housed 6 families like mine. Oak Park's a beautiful area, the driver remarked, noting my wide-eyed observation. Lot of successful folks out here. I'm visiting my daughter, I replied, pride swelling in my chest despite my confusion about how Rachel could afford such luxury. Lucky woman having family in a place like this. Lucky indeed, I thought, though unease crept into my excitement. How exactly had Rachel managed to buy a house in one of Illinois' most expensive zip codes? The Uber slowed to a stop before a house that belonged in architectural magazines. I sat frozen in the back seat, staring up at stone columns and perfectly manicured topiaries that probably cost more than my monthly rent. A circular driveway curved around an ornate fountain where water danced in the early evening light. 2 luxury cars, a Mercedes and a Lexus, sat parked like gleaming statements of success. This is it, ma'am, the driver announced cheerfully. Beautiful place. I fumbled with my wallet, hands trembling slightly as I counted out bills and added a generous tip. Thank you. Have a good evening. The car door felt heavier than it should have as I stepped onto pristine pavement. My shoes, polished but obviously worn, clicked against stone as I walked the curved path toward an entrance that could have belonged to a small hotel. Perfectly trimmed hedges lined the walkway, and motion sensor lights illuminated my approach with theatrical precision. Before I could even reach for the brass doorbell, the massive oak door swung open. A middle-aged Hispanic man with kind eyes and graying hair stood in the doorway, wearing a crisp black vest that screamed professional household staff. His smile seemed genuine, but something flickered behind his eyes. Concern. Warning. The expression vanished so quickly, I wondered if I'd imagined it. Mrs. Williams, he said warmly, stepping aside to usher me into a foyer that made my entire living room look like a closet. I'm Carlos. Miss Rachel and Mr. Marcus are so excited you're here. The interior took my breath away. Marble floors stretched toward a curved staircase that belonged in movies about rich people. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over oil paintings that looked original and expensive. Fresh flowers, real ones, not the artificial arrangements I favored, filled the air with subtle perfume. Mom! Rachel's voice rang from somewhere deeper in the house, footsteps echoing as she approached. She appeared in the foyer looking like a magazine model. Expensive pantsuit, perfect hair, teeth that definitely hadn't been that white at her graduation. When she reached me, her embrace felt desperate, lasting a beat too long. "You look great," she said, stepping back to study me with eyes that seemed both grateful and anxious. "Really great." Marcus materialized beside her like a polished apparition in designer casual wear. His grooming was flawless, his watch subtle but clearly expensive, his smile so perfect it felt rehearsed. "Dorothy." He stepped forward to kiss my cheek, enveloping me in expensive cologne. "You look wonderful. We're so happy you're here." I managed a smile, still overwhelmed by the sheer opulence surrounding us. "This place is incredible. How did you—" "Real estate," Rachel interrupted quickly, her laugh a little too bright. "Caught the market at exactly the right time. Lucky timing mostly." Something about her tone made me pause, but Marcus was already taking my arm with practiced grace. "Come, let's get you settled. Carlos, could you take Mrs. Williams' coat?" I handed over my jacket, my best one, though it suddenly felt shabby in these surroundings. Carlos accepted it with another of those kind but troubled smiles, disappearing toward what I assumed was a coat closet large enough to house a small family. "I brought this," I said, offering the whiskey bottle I'd selected so carefully. "Thought we could share a drink." Rachel's face lit up as she examined the label. "Mom, this is fantastic. You shouldn't have, but I'm glad you did." She squeezed my shoulder with enthusiasm that felt slightly forced. "Marcus has been cooking all afternoon. He remembered how much you love pot roast." How did Marcus remember my food preferences? We'd shared perhaps 3 meals together in 5 years, and I couldn't recall pot roast being a topic of conversation. But his smile was so warm, so welcoming that I pushed the thought aside. "You're too kind," I told him, meaning it, despite my confusion. "Family takes care of family," he replied smoothly, gesturing toward the dining room. "That's what matters most." Rachel led us toward what I assumed was the dining room, her stride confident, but something tight around her eyes. Carlos had vanished somewhere into the house's depths, leaving us in this perfect tableau of family reunion. As we walked through rooms that belonged in decorating magazines, I tried to reconcile this obvious wealth with the daughter who'd asked me for money just a year ago. The dining room opened before us like something from a period drama. Mahogany tables set for 3 with china that caught the light from an overhead chandelier. Silver gleamed against white linen, and the scent of cooking pot roast drifted from somewhere beyond swinging doors that probably led to a kitchen larger than my apartment. "This is beautiful," I breathed, genuinely awed. Marcus beamed at the compliment. "We want tonight to be special. We want to start over, Dorothy. All of us." As Rachel pulled out my chair with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to formal dining, I found myself hoping Leonard could see this moment. Our girl had made something of herself, found success beyond our modest dreams. Maybe he'd be proud of how she'd turned out. Maybe he'd approve of this chance at reconciliation I was about to take. The dining room welcomed us like a scene from a lifestyle magazine. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier's warm light, casting tiny rainbows across starched white linens. Silver gleamed against bone china that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Each place setting looked like artwork, multiple forks arranged with military precision, cloth napkins folded into perfect peaks. "This is incredible," I breathed, running my fingers along the mahogany table's polished edge. Marcus beamed as he pulled out my chair at the head of the table. "Only the best for family reunions, right, Mom?" The casual use of "Mom" startled me, though I tried not to show it. Rachel settled gracefully to my left, while Marcus claimed the seat to my right. The arrangement felt deliberate, both of them positioned where they could watch my every reaction, guide every conversation. Carlos appeared silently from what I assumed was the kitchen, carrying delicate appetizers arranged like tiny sculptures. "Let's start with your whiskey," Rachel announced, already opening the bottle I'd brought. The amber liquid caught the light as she poured generous portions into heavy crystal tumblers. "This calls for a proper toast." She handed me a glass filled higher than I would have poured for myself. The whiskey's warmth spread through my chest as Marcus raised his wine glass with theatrical grace. To family, he said, his smile radiant. To forgiveness and fresh starts. To Leonard, Rachel added, her voice catching slightly. He would have wanted us together like this. The whiskey burned sweetly as we drank. Leonard always said alcohol loosened tongues and hearts in equal measure. Tonight, surrounded by such obvious prosperity, I found myself wondering what he'd think of this opulent display. Tell us about the restaurants. Marcus leaned forward with genuine seeming interest. Rachel says you built an empire from nothing. Empire is too grand a word. I took another sip, feeling unusually relaxed. Just hard work and faith in people. Leonard always said, treat employees like family, customers like friends. Don't be modest, Mom. Rachel refilled my glass before I noticed it had emptied. 7 locations now. That's impressive by any standard. 7. She'd been keeping track, even during our silence. Something warm expanded in my chest. Maybe she'd cared more than I'd realized. Carlos served the soup course with practiced efficiency, though I noticed his hands trembling slightly as he placed the bowl before me. Rich lobster bisque in delicate porcelain. Another reminder of how far we'd traveled from my modest Chicago kitchen. Do you ever think about retirement? Marcus asked casually, cutting his bread with surgical precision, slowing down a bit. The restaurants keep me busy. It's what Leonard and I built together. I found myself drinking more freely than usual, the combination of good company and fine alcohol loosening inhibitions I'd maintained for months. Every location has his fingerprints on it. Rachel and Marcus exchanged a glance I pretended not to notice. They seemed to communicate without words, like couples do after years together. Marcus's hand found mine briefly, his fingers cool against my skin. But you can't work forever. Have you thought about succession planning, legal arrangements for the future? The question felt oddly specific, but the alcohol made everything seem harmless. One day at a time. One day at a time. Carlos appeared with the main course, pot roast that smelled exactly like Leonard's recipe. How had Marcus known? We'd shared so few meals together over the years. This is perfect, I told him truthfully. Exactly like my husband used to make. Marcus's smile looked painted on. I wanted tonight to be special, to remind you that family takes care of family. As we ate, Rachel regaled me with stories about her real estate ventures, though her explanations remained frustratingly vague. Marcus asked pointed questions about restaurant operations, profit margins, property values. Their curiosity felt intense, almost professional. The room grew warmer as evening progressed. My head felt lighter than it should have after just 2 glasses of whiskey. Rich food, good company, and the relief of reconciliation, I told myself. Nothing more than that. Rachel checked her watch when she thought I wasn't looking. Marcus monitored my consumption like a bartender tracking a regular customer. Carlos moved between kitchen and dining room with nervous efficiency, dropping a fork that clattered against marble floors. Something nagged at the edge of my consciousness, but the whiskey made thinking difficult. Everything felt slightly surreal, like watching myself from outside my body. When had I become such a lightweight? The Queen's opening last month, I was saying, reaching into my jacket pocket for my phone. Leonard would have been so proud of how the community welcomed us. My phone vibrated against my palm just as I started to pull it out. The vibration startled me mid-sentence. Sorry, I mumbled, glancing apologetically at Rachel and Marcus. Probably just the night manager with some routine question. But the number on my screen belonged to no one I recognized. A local area code, but completely foreign digits. I frowned, thumb hovering over the notification. Restaurant emergencies came from familiar numbers. Miguel from the Southside location, Sharon from the Lincoln Park spot, Tony from our newest Bronzeville venture. The phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. Everything all right? Rachel asked, leaning forward with what seemed like excessive concern. Just unfamiliar number. I shielded the screen partially with my napkin, driven by an instinct I couldn't explain. The text message appeared in stark capital letters. Stand up and leave. Now. Say nothing to your daughter. My blood turned cold. The elegant dining room suddenly felt like it was tilting, though I couldn't tell if that was shock or the whiskey making my head swim. I read the message again, certain I'd misunderstood. Same words, same urgent command. Mom. Marcus's voice seemed to come from far away. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? I forced my features into what I hoped resembled normalcy, slipping the phone back into my pocket with hands that trembled more than they should. Fine, just rich food hitting me harder than expected. But I wasn't fine. Someone unknown had my private number, knew where I was, felt compelled to warn me about what? About Rachel? About this perfect evening that suddenly felt like an elaborate stage production. The whiskey glass in my hand caught the chandelier light, amber liquid swirling as my fingers shook imperceptibly. When had I become this dizzy? 2 glasses shouldn't affect me this strongly. Not with a full meal. Maybe some water, Marcus suggested smoothly, already signaling Carlos. Rachel studied my face with sharp attention. You sure you're okay? You went completely white there for a second. I'm sure. The lie came easier than it should have. Just need to, excuse me for a moment. Bathroom. Rachel pointed toward the hallway. Second door on the left. We'll wait for you. Carlos is bringing dessert. I stood carefully, testing my balance. The room swayed slightly, but I managed to walk normally toward the hallway. Behind me, Rachel and Marcus's voices continued in low, concerned tones. The hallway stretched before me, lined with expensive artwork and subtle lighting. Second door on the left led to what I assumed was a powder room. But instead of turning left, something made me continue straight toward what looked like a kitchen entrance. The anonymous message burned in my memory. Whoever sent it knew something I didn't. Someone felt I was in enough danger to risk exposure by warning a complete stranger. Carlos stood at an enormous sink, washing crystal glasses with methodical precision. His back was turned toward me, but he didn't acknowledge my presence, even though my footsteps must have been audible on the marble floors. He continued his work as if I were invisible. The kitchen's back door stood just beyond him, leading to what looked like a garden. Freedom, fresh air, space to think clearly away from Rachel and Marcus's watchful eyes. I moved quietly past Carlos, expecting him to turn, to question my presence, to alert my hosts. He never looked up from his washing, though his shoulders tensed slightly as I passed. The door opened silently onto a manicured lawn that could have belonged to a country club. Motion sensors illuminated my path across perfectly trimmed grass toward a gate in the property's back fence. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, carrying its mysterious warning like a ticking bomb. Street lamps beyond the fence promised anonymity, distance from whatever danger had prompted that urgent message. I walked faster, my dress shoes slipping slightly on dewy grass, not caring about stains or appearances anymore. The gate opened onto a quiet residential street lined with mansions that probably housed millionaires and their secrets. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers, opened my ride-sharing app, and requested pickup 1 block away from Rachel's address. 5 minutes until arrival. 5 minutes to decide whether I was being paranoid or protecting myself from something real. The phone in my hand felt like evidence of conspiracy or paranoia. I couldn't tell which, but that message, those urgent capital letters, had triggered every survival instinct Leonard's practical wisdom had ever taught me. When someone warns you about danger, he'd always said, listen first and ask questions later. The Uber's headlights appeared at the end of the block, cutting through suburban darkness like a lifeline. I climbed into the back seat, gave the driver my Chicago address, and immediately dialed the number that had shattered my evening. It rang twice before a voice answered. Careful, anonymous, deliberately neutral. I hoped you would call this number. Who is this? My voice came out rougher than intended. Why did you warn me? I cannot reveal myself, but you were in immediate danger tonight. That's impossible. I was having dinner with my daughter. A pause that stretched too long. Then, your daughter owes $2.3 million to people who break bones when payment is late. The Uber driver glanced in his rearview mirror as we merged into traffic, probably wondering why his passenger had gone completely silent mid-conversation. I gripped the phone tighter, the anonymous voice's words echoing in my head like hammer blows. That's impossible, I repeated, though my voice lacked conviction. Rachel owns real estate. She lives in a mansion. Borrowed against everything to fund gambling debts. Underground casinos, high-stakes poker, sports betting with organized loan sharks. The voice remained calm, methodical. 2 weeks to pay or face serious physical consequences. My free hand found the door handle instinctively, as if I could escape this information by fleeing the moving car. Through the window, expensive Oak Park neighborhoods blurred past, perfect lawns hiding imperfect secrets. Even if that were true, I said slowly, what does it have to do with warning me away from dinner? The whiskey you brought contained zetrazolam. It multiplies alcohol effects by a factor of 5, making you extremely susceptible to suggestion. The words hit like a physical blow. The unusual dizziness, the way 2 glasses had affected me like 6, my increasing willingness to discuss business details I'd normally keep private. I stopped, remembering Rachel's eager insistence on opening my gift immediately, Marcus's careful monitoring of my consumption, their coordinated refilling of my glass before I'd noticed it emptying. Legal documents were prepared in advance, the voice continued relentlessly. Complete transfer of your restaurant properties and business assets. Power of attorney granting your daughter full control. The only missing element was your signature. The Uber driver kept his eyes on the road, professionally ignoring his passenger's obvious distress. I stared out at suburban streets that looked suddenly sinister, every well-lit window potentially concealing similar betrayals. How do you know all this? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you escaped before signing anything. Zetrazolam combined with alcohol can cause memory gaps, making it easy to claim you willingly transferred everything. I thought about Rachel's nervous energy, Marcus's rehearsed warmth, their pointed questions about succession planning and retirement. The evening replayed in my memory with horrifying new context. Every toast, every refilled glass, every strategic touch designed to lower my guard. My daughter wouldn't. But the protest died in my throat. The girl who'd once asked me to read her bedtime stories had grown into a woman desperate enough to drug her own mother. The loan sharks gave her 2 weeks. That deadline is in 11 days. Why are you helping me? I asked finally. Because what they planned was wrong. Because you deserve to know the truth about people you trust. The anonymous caller knew details no stranger should possess. Debt amounts, drug names, illegal document specifics. Someone with intimate access to Rachel and Marcus's conspiracy. Who are you really? Someone who sees more than people realize. Someone who couldn't stand by and watch an innocent woman be destroyed by family greed. Carlos. The realization hit me like lightning. His nervous efficiency during dinner. The way he'd avoided eye contact. His deliberate non-reaction when I'd passed through the kitchen. He'd known about the plan and chosen conscience over employment security. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. They'll realize you're gone soon. Rachel is desperate enough to try again, possibly with more dangerous methods. The Uber continued toward Chicago, each mile increasing the distance between me and the daughter I thought I knew. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Rachel's number, probably wondering what was taking so long in the bathroom. What should I do? Protect yourself. Change locks. Inform your lawyers. Move financial assets to accounts Rachel can't access. She knows your business inside and out. Every vulnerability, every routine. The driver caught my eye in the mirror. We're about halfway to Chicago, ma'am. You doing all right back there? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Through the phone, I could hear the anonymous caller breathing steadily, waiting for my next question. Will you testify if this goes to court? I can't, but the truth has a way of surfacing when people dig deep enough. 3 more missed calls appeared on my screen. Rachel's panic would be growing as bathroom minutes stretched into an obvious absence. Soon she'd realize I'd fled deliberately, and desperation would make her dangerous. Be very careful, the voice warned. Desperate people make desperate choices. Your daughter has 11 days to find $2.3 million or face consequences worse than bankruptcy. The call ended, leaving me alone with the Uber driver's soft jazz and the weight of complete family destruction. In one evening, I'd gained a daughter and lost her again. Learned the price of trust and the cost of naivety. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Mom, where are you? We're worried sick. I stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. The woman who'd sent those words had planned to drug me unconscious and steal everything Leonard and I had built together. The Uber driver cleared his throat gently. Ma'am, we're approaching the city. Still want to go to the original address? I looked out at the city lights reflecting off dark water, then back at my phone showing the route to Oak Park still available in my GPS. Safety lay ahead in Chicago, but confrontation waited behind in Illinois suburbs. For the first time in my life, I had to choose between protecting myself and protecting what remained of my family. Chicago's familiar skyline beckoned through the Uber's windshield, promising safety in the comfort of my worn armchair, where Leonard's memory lived in every thread. But safety felt like cowardice now, knowing what Rachel was capable of doing to others when desperation struck again. I pulled Leonard's wedding photo from my wallet, edges soft from years of handling, his smile as radiant as the day we'd promised to build something meaningful together. He'd never backed down from difficult conversations, never chose comfort over doing what was right. She wouldn't run, I whispered to his image. The driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. Everything all right back there, ma'am? Actually, no. I straightened in my seat, decision crystallizing like steel in my chest. I need to make a phone call. Then we're changing destination. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. 2 rings, then a professional voice. Emergency services. What's your emergency? My family is attempting to poison me for money. I have evidence and they're still at the location with prepared legal documents. The words sounded surreal spoken aloud, like lines from a television drama. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Not right now, but I need officers at 482 Lakeside Avenue, Oak Park, Illinois. I'm returning there to gather evidence. The dispatcher's questions came rapid fire. Nature of poisoning, number of suspects, weapons present. I answered methodically, my business training taking over. Clear facts, specific details, actionable information. Officers are en route. Estimated arrival 20 minutes. Ma'am, I strongly advise you not to return to that location until... I understand the risk. Leonard's photo stared up at me, his eyes holding that expression he wore when I needed to be braver than I felt. But if I don't go back, they'll destroy evidence and try this again with someone else. After disconnecting, I leaned forward toward the driver. Change of plans. We're going back to Oak Park. Ma'am, you seem really upset. Maybe you should think about this. This isn't a rash decision. I met his eyes in the mirror. Sometimes you have to choose between being safe and doing what's right. The return journey felt different from our earlier drive. Street lights illuminated determination instead of confusion, purpose instead of hurt. Each mile brought me closer to confronting the daughter I'd raised, the family I'd trusted, the future I'd have to rebuild from scratch. Leonard's voice seemed to whisper from the photograph. Family means telling the truth, even when it hurts. 20 minutes later, we turned onto Lakeside Avenue. Police cars approached from the opposite direction, lights off, but unmistakably official. My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized this was really happening. I was about to destroy my family to save myself and possibly others. Wait around the corner, I told the driver. This might take a while. Walking up the curved driveway felt like approaching an execution. The mansion's perfect exterior concealed such calculated evil, such desperate betrayal. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorbell. Time to face my daughter. The doorbell's chimes echoed through the mansion like a death knell. Footsteps approached quickly, too quickly for casual concern. Rachel yanked the door open, relief and suspicion warring across her features. "Mom, where have you been?" Her smile looked painted on. "We were getting worried sick." "Sorry, sweetheart." I forced my voice into apologetic tones. I needed some fresh air. Felt dizzy after all that rich food. Dizzy. Her eyes sharpened. "You were gone for almost half an hour. Marcus thought something terrible had happened. Time got away from me. Beautiful neighborhood you have here." I walked further than intended. Marcus appeared behind Rachel, his designer casual wear wrinkled from nervous pacing. His perfect host mask slipped for just a moment, revealing raw panic underneath. "Dorothy, you gave us such a scare." He reached for my arm with fingers that trembled slightly. "Are you feeling better now?" "Much better, thank you." I allowed him to guide me back inside, noting how his grip lingered too long, too tight. Just needed to clear my head. The foyer felt smaller now, oppressive rather than impressive. Every expensive detail reminded me of the blood money that had purchased this illusion of success. "Perhaps you had too much whiskey with dinner." Marcus's laugh sounded brittle. "Let's get you some water. And actually, I think I'd like to sit down again." I moved deliberately toward the dining room. "If that's all right." Rachel and Marcus exchanged a glance laden with meaning I was supposed to miss. Their coordinated response felt rehearsed, like actors who'd forgotten their lines. "Of course, Mom. Whatever you need." The dining room had been hastily reorganized during my absence. Papers that might have been scattered across the table were nowhere to be seen. Carlos moved efficiently between kitchen and dining room, his nervous energy more pronounced than before. I settled back into my chair at the head of the table, noting how Rachel and Marcus flanked me exactly as before. The crystal glasses had been cleared, the dinner plates stacked, but the atmosphere crackled with unspoken tension. "I hope you don't mind," Marcus said carefully, "but we cleaned up a bit. Didn't want to leave Carlos with too much work." "Very considerate," I smiled blandly, wondering what evidence they'd hidden while I was gone. Rachel drummed her fingers against the mahogany table, a nervous habit from childhood that betrayed her anxiety now. "So, Mom, feeling completely recovered? No more dizziness or confusion?" The question carried undertones I pretended not to hear. "Clear as a bell, sweetheart. That fresh air worked wonders." Marcus leaned forward with calculated concern. "You know, rich meals can affect people differently as we get older. Perhaps next time we should plan something lighter." "Next time. As if there would be one after tonight." "I've always had a strong constitution," I replied evenly. "Takes more than good food and wine to slow me down." Carlos appeared with fresh water glasses, his movements sharp and efficient. When he placed mine before me, his fingers brushed the table edge in what might have been an accidental tremor. Rachel checked her watch, a gesture so subtle I almost missed it. Whatever timeline they were working against was growing shorter. "Well," she said with forced brightness, "since you're feeling better, maybe we could continue our evening." I know Marcus was looking forward to more conversation. "Absolutely." Marcus's smile could have powered the chandelier. "We have so much catching up to do." But something had shifted during my absence. Their desperation was showing through the cracks in their performance, and I could sense the evening building toward a crescendo. Rachel stood suddenly and moved toward the liquor cabinet. "Mom, let's have one more toast before the evening ends." Rachel's hands trembled almost imperceptibly as she measured whiskey into fresh crystal tumblers. I watched her work, noting how she lingered over my glass, adding extra liquid that caught the light differently than the amber spirits. "You know," I began casually, "I want to tell you about the day you were born, Rachel." Her shoulders tensed slightly. Mom, that's sweet, but maybe we should toast first. This whiskey is too good to let it get warm. This is important, sweetheart. I settled back in my chair, hands folded peacefully. You were in labor. I was in labor for 14 hours. Longest day of my life. Marcus leaned forward with forced enthusiasm. Dorothy, the whiskey will lose its flavor if we wait too long. Can't we drink and listen at the same time? Patience, dear. Some stories can't be rushed. I watched Rachel carry the glasses toward our table, noting the slight sediment swirling in mine when it caught the chandelier light. Where was I? Oh yes, Leonard was convinced something was wrong because labor was taking so long. Rachel set my glass down carefully, ensuring I could see the generous portion she'd poured. Her own glass contained significantly less, crystal clear, without any unusual particles. The doctor kept assuring us everything was normal, I continued, lifting my glass as if to examine the whiskey's color. But Leonard had instincts about these things. He always knew when something wasn't quite right. Fascinating, Marcus interrupted, his smile growing strained. But surely that toast is getting warm. Family stories are so much better with good whiskey. I swirled my glass gently, watching foreign particles dance in the amber liquid. Zetrazolam, according to my anonymous caller, enough to make me compliant, suggestible, vulnerable to signing away everything Leonard and I had built together. You're absolutely right about savoring good whiskey, I agreed, bringing the glass closer to my lips without drinking. Leonard always said patience makes everything taste better. Rachel's eye twitched. Mom, you've been talking for 10 minutes. The whiskey really is getting warm. Time flies when you're sharing memories. I gestured expansively with my glass, using the motion to avoid actually drinking. Did I mention how tiny you were? Just 6 pounds, but you had the strongest grip I'd ever felt. Marcus stood abruptly and moved behind my chair, his hands settling on my shoulders with practiced intimacy. Dorothy, you're such a wonderful storyteller. Why don't we toast to Rachel's birth? Then you can continue. His fingers pressed against my shoulders with increasing insistence. I could feel his desperation through his touch. The plan was falling apart, and they knew it. Leonard said you'd be stubborn from day one, I continued, pretending not to notice Marcus's pressure. He was right, wasn't he? Once you set your mind on something, nothing could stop you. Rachel's composure cracked slightly. Mom, please, just one sip, then tell us about Dad. The thing about stubbornness, I mused, still holding my untouched glass, is that it can be a virtue or a vice. Leonard always worried about which way you'd choose. The room fell silent, except for the soft clink of Carlos washing dishes in the kitchen. Rachel and Marcus stared at me with barely concealed frustration, their perfect plan unraveling with each passing minute. I think, I said slowly, Leonard would be heartbroken to see what choices you've made. Rachel's face went white. What do you mean by that? Before I could answer, 3 sharp knocks echoed from the front door. Authoritative, unmistakable. Police. Open the door. Rachel's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor as her face drained of all color. The metallic click of handcuffs cut through the dining room's stunned silence like a judge's gavel. Rachel stood frozen, her face the color of old parchment, as the senior officer stepped forward with practiced authority. Rachel Miller, you're under arrest for attempted poisoning, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse. The officer's voice carried the weight of years spent dealing with family betrayals. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Rachel's voice cracked like a teenager's. Officer, this is just a misunderstanding. My mother is confused. Mom, please. Marcus's hysteria built like a kettle reaching boil. Tell them this is all some terrible mistake. I stood slowly, the untouched glass of poisoned whiskey still in my hand. The sediment swirled like guilty secrets in amber liquid. There's no mistake. This glass contains zetrazolam. My daughter added it to make me sign business transfer documents. The junior officer accepted the glass with latex gloves, holding it up to the chandelier light. The foreign particles were clearly visible, undeniable evidence of calculated betrayal. Ma'am, attempted poisoning carries 8 to 12 years minimum sentence, the senior officer informed Rachel as the handcuffs clicked into place. Conspiracy and elder abuse add additional time. Rachel's knees buckled slightly. 12 years. But the loan sharks, they'll kill me if I don't pay in 11 days. Marcus's face drained of color. Rachel, shut up. Don't say anything else. But Rachel was beyond strategic thinking. Mom, you don't understand. They threatened to break my legs, then kill me. I had no choice. You had choices, I replied quietly. You chose gambling over family. You chose crime over honest work. You chose to poison your own mother rather than face consequences. The officers exchanged glances. They'd heard desperate justifications before, but attempted matricide for gambling debts registered as particularly disturbing. Marcus Henderson, the junior officer announced, you're also under arrest as a co-conspirator. No. Marcus's perfectly groomed appearance began to crumble. I didn't plan anything. Rachel forced me to help. I'm a victim too. The senior officer's expression suggested he'd heard that defense many times. Sir, evidence shows you researched the victim's preferences and participated in the drugging plan. As they led Rachel and Marcus toward the front door, Rachel turned back with eyes that held one last desperate manipulation attempt. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? Dad would be heartbroken. Your father valued honesty above comfort, I answered firmly. He would never forgive what you tried to do tonight. Carlos appeared from the kitchen, his professional mask finally slipping to reveal satisfaction mixed with sadness. He'd witnessed justice served, but understood the human cost. The mansion fell silent, except for the distant sound of car doors slamming and engines starting. Blue and red lights painted the expensive walls in colors of consequence as the police vehicles disappeared into the night. Standing alone in the dining room where my family had tried to destroy me, I felt Leonard's presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. He would have made the same choice. The expensive crystal lay shattered on marble floors, the poisoned whiskey spreading like spilled blood. Evidence of how close I'd come to losing everything I'd worked to build. My phone buzzed with a text from the senior officer. Station processing will take 2-3 hours. We'll need your formal statement. Time to complete what I'd started. Time to ensure justice was properly served. The Oak Park police station buzzed with late evening activity. Drunk driving arrests, domestic disturbances, and now my family's conspiracy case. Rachel and Marcus sat in separate holding cells, their designer clothes looking absurd against institutional grey walls. Through reinforced glass, I watched Rachel pace her cell like a caged animal. Every few minutes she'd glance toward where I sat giving my statement, her expression cycling between fury and desperate pleading. Mrs. Williams, Detective Morrison set down her coffee with deliberate precision. Walk me through the zetrazolam again. How did you know what to look for? Anonymous tip, I replied honestly. Someone called warning me about the plan. They knew specific details about the drug and its effects. Any idea who this person might be? I thought about Carlos's nervous efficiency during dinner, his careful positioning to observe without seeming to watch. No idea, but whoever it was saved my life. Marcus's sobs echoed from the men's holding area through the station's chaos. This is all Rachel's fault, his voice carried. I just went along because I was scared. Detective Morrison raised an eyebrow. Fear doesn't typically excuse conspiracy to commit elder abuse and fraud. We found the prepared legal documents in Rachel's office. Power of attorney, business transfers, the whole package. How long will they serve? Attempted poisoning alone? 8 to 12 years. Add conspiracy, elder abuse, and fraud? Rachel's looking at 15 to 20. Marcus might get less if he cooperates, but he's still facing serious time. The numbers felt surreal. My daughter would spend her 40s in prison because she couldn't accept responsibility for her gambling addiction. The loan sharks she mentioned, Detective Morrison continued, will need details about those threats. Might help explain her desperation, though it won't excuse attempted murder. Through the window, I could see Rachel slumped on her cell's narrow bench, head in her hands. 28 years of my life raising her, teaching her right from wrong, building a legacy she could inherit, all destroyed by her inability to face consequences like an adult. Mom. Her voice suddenly boomed through the station as she spotted me through the glass. Please, I'll pay it all back. I'll go to treatment. I'll change. The same promises she'd made during our last argument about money. The same manipulation that had worked when she was younger and I was more naive about enabling destructive behavior. Mrs. Williams, Detective Morrison observed my daughter's outburst. She's going to keep trying to manipulate you. Standard pattern with family financial crimes. I know. Leonard always said I was too soft with her. Maybe if I had been stronger earlier. Not your fault, ma'am. Adult children make their own choices. Marcus appeared at his cell window, grooming disheveled, watch no longer gleaming. Dorothy, please talk to them. Tell them I was coerced. I never wanted to hurt you. His desperation felt familiar. The same tone Rachel had used when caught in childhood lies. Neither of them accepted responsibility. Both blamed circumstances beyond their control. Detective, I need to ask you something important. I leaned forward, decision crystallizing. The anonymous person who warned me, they risked everything to save a stranger. If I knew who they were, I'd want to help them. Understood. If they come forward, we'll make sure their cooperation is noted. The station's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that revealed truth without flattery. My family's perfect facade had crumbled completely, exposing the desperate criminality underneath. 3 hours later, paperwork complete and formal statements recorded, I stood in the station lobby. An officer approached with car keys. Ready to go home, Mrs. Williams? We'll drive you back to Chicago. I pulled out my phone, staring at the number that had saved my life. Actually, I need to make one call first. To thank someone who deserves to know how this ended. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered, no longer disguised by fear, but warm with genuine concern. This is Carlos Rivera. How are you, Mrs. Williams? Carlos. Relief flooded through me like warm sunlight. You were right there the whole time. You saw everything and still found the courage to save me. I couldn't let them hurt you. You treated me with kindness when your daughter and her husband treated me like furniture. Sitting in the police station lobby at nearly midnight, I found myself crying for the first time since Leonard's funeral. Not from pain, but from overwhelming gratitude for this man's moral courage. Carlos, how did you know about the Zetrazolam, the documents, all of it? 3 days ago, I was cleaning Miss Rachel's office when I heard them planning. They spoke as if I wasn't human, like I couldn't understand English or wouldn't matter if I did. The casual cruelty struck me harder than the attempted poisoning. My daughter had become someone who dismissed human dignity based on job titles and immigration status. They discussed everything. The drug, how much to use, where to hide the papers. Mr. Marcus researched your favorite foods, your business routines, everything needed to manipulate you. You risked your job, possibly deportation, to warn a stranger. Not a stranger, his voice softened. A good woman who reminded me of my mother. Someone who said please and thank you and actually looked at me when speaking. The police officer gestured that my ride was ready, but this conversation mattered more than convenience. Carlos, I need to ask you something important. Do you have another job lined up? No, ma'am. After tonight, I doubt I'll get references from the Millers. I own 7 restaurants in Chicago. I need a manager for my newest location. Someone I can trust completely, someone with your moral character and judgment. Silence stretched across the phone connection. When Carlos spoke again, his voice trembled with emotion. "Mrs. Williams, you don't have to. This isn't charity. I need employees who do the right thing when no one's watching. You proved tonight that you're exactly that person. The salary would be $60,000 to start, health benefits, profit sharing after 1 year, plus all the job training you need to advance in restaurant management." Carlos's sob was audible through the phone. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Say you'll start Monday morning, 10 a.m. at the Bronzeville location. I'll be there to personally train you." The police officer waited patiently while I completed arrangements with Carlos. Address exchange, start date confirmation, promise of work visa assistance if needed. When I finally hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. The ride back to Chicago passed in comfortable silence. Streetlights illuminated familiar neighborhoods where honesty still mattered more than wealth, where people worked hard without expecting others to fund their mistakes. My modest house welcomed me like an old friend. Inside, family photos covered the refrigerator. Rachel at various ages, Marcus at their wedding, Leonard smiling from better times. I removed Rachel's photo carefully, not destroying it, but placing it in a kitchen drawer. Some memories deserved preservation, but not daily visibility. Marcus's wedding picture followed. Leonard's photo remained on the refrigerator, his smile approving of justice served and new friendships earned through moral courage. On my calendar, I wrote, "Carlos, 10 a.m. Monday," in the space reserved for important appointments. Below that, "New beginning." Outside, Chicago hummed with honest late-night activity. Night shift workers heading home, early shift workers starting their day. People who understood that integrity couldn't be purchased with borrowed money or stolen through family manipulation. Leonard would have loved Carlos's story. He always said, "The best employees are those who do right things for right reasons, regardless of personal cost." My phone buzzed with a final text from Detective Morrison. Both suspects formally charged. Trials scheduled for August. Your testimony will be crucial. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, finally ready to sleep peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight justice had been served by good people making difficult choices. In my bedroom, Leonard's Old Spice still sat on the dresser, a reminder that love means protecting people from harm, even when that harm comes from family. Especially when it comes from family.